Recently, I had the pleasure of sitting down with game designer Edmund McMillen, creator of such titles as Super Meat Boy, The Binding of Isaac, and the brand new game, The End is Nigh. Edmund and I talked about the process of creation, the relationship between player and designer, video games as art with an emphasis on personal catharsis, and of course, Magic the Gathering. Let's begin, shall we? Edmund, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
If you'd like to take a minute just before we get started to tell anyone who may not already be familiar with you, just who you are and what you do.
I'm Edmund McMillen. I'm a game designer, artist type. I'm most known for Super Meat Boy, The Binding of Isaac, and I was in Indie Game the Movie. You know, some old school gamers know my first game, Gish, which won awards way back before indie games were cool. And yeah, I've been making tons of Flash games for the past 17 years. Wow.
And indie games are cool now, aren't they?
They are cool.
That is.
They're almost too cool. It's a bit of a, we're at the tail end of a gold rush, it seems.
Interesting. There's a few points on that I want to touch on later, but I actually want to start out with a question about The Binding of Isaac, which you had a card game of it come out recently. With full disclosure, I have a instructional how to play on my channel on that. But going back to the original indie game itself, you drew inspiration for this, if I'm correct, from your upbringing in regards to religion and the religion that was around you in your family. And you used this game as a form of, what I want to ask is, would it be commentary on that religion, or just a way to work through and respond to and understand for yourself those religions that you were around growing up? Was the game more commentary to the viewers, what I'm asking, or just your own self-discovery and expression through that game?
I'd say, I mean, all of my games are me working through something cathartically. I mean, it's definitely more of a catharsis than anything else. Like, I'm never trying to say something. I'm trying to figure something out. I'm putting all the pieces down on paper, and I'm trying to see where they connect, and I'm exploring them. I think I approached the initial commentary, if you will, when it came to The Binding of Isaac, was more of a critical view on religion and how it kind of negatively affected me and made me feel more like a black sheep and more like an outcast and pushed me to the fringe more. But then I came through the other side, realizing that, like, my experience with religion also was very creative. Like, it was very inspiring. You know, biblical stories are iconic for a reason. They are well written, and they say more than they appear to say. Like, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of complexity there. And I like allegory, and I like depth in story, and simplistic storytelling with allegorical elements is really inspiring to me. So I just kind of doing the same thing, and coming out the other end, it was kind of like, well, it got me here. It was rough. It was rough being raised by half of my family, like, born again Christian, hardcore, you know, fire and brimstone type people, and the other side, super ritualistic Catholics. And I don't know, it was just kind of just saw it for what it was a bit more, and but still got to have that kind of original message, I guess, if you will, or what I was exploring, which was kind of like what happens to a kid who doesn't fit into, you know, a box when it came to what Christianity says is correct. And what are the negative effects that organized religion could have on a child who is an outcast or feels like they're born different or whatever else. And that was what I initially kind of went in. So I think it still comes through, but it doesn't, I don't want to be super preachy. And I want to just put out my own truths. That's all I have. Like, the only thing that I can truly write about and be honest with my art is the stuff that I've personally experienced, that is through my own eyes. So I try my best to do that without saying this is the right way to think and be.
Well, I think it's a very common, you described it as a catharsis for you. I think it's a very common struggle or path that many people go through, and that's possibly not to in any way underplay the just gameplay elements that made Isaac so popular and so long-lasting, but also I think that that message being a part of it, being intertwined with everything from the elements of the game in terms of scenery and graphics to also just what you as a viewer might be discovering and finding about yourself as you go through it is definitely going to play a role. Do you think it's possible to separate those elements? If someone came to you and said, hey, why can't you just make a basic platformer? I don't want a message. I don't want any art in my art. I mean, that goes into the question of video games are an art, but is it possible to strip those things out of it? And if so, what is left?
Yeah, I mean, I guess what is left, it would be the hundreds of Isaac clones out there that are floating around that are very empty and just focus on gameplay. Like, and I'm not trying to be pompous about, like, I don't think I'm offering something that is just the bee's knees when it comes to this stuff. I would say the majority of people, the high majority of people that play Isaac, don't care or know much about the story or anything that went into, or anything, or even who I am, or any direction I was taking when writing the story and designing the game. That stuff doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter. Well, the only thing that matters to me is that I do something that's inspiring for myself. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm doing it. I'm not doing it for anything else. I'm not trying to make some grand art piece. I'm not trying to do. This is what keeps me interested enough to finish a game that I work on for 2 years.
Yeah.
It needs to be personal. It needs to be honest. It needs to be something that I'm obsessed with, because I want to be able to put every little bit of myself into it. And if you're not, then it's just not going to happen. And that's been my experience with projects that I've not been able to finish.
I think that honesty, and that's a great word that you used there, is what will ultimately, even if someone might not be aware of your intent or the context of what you were drawing on for a game such as Isaac or any other for that matter, that just simply that being honest to yourself is what creates a added gravity that you're right. People just trying to do a quick get rich quick clone of what you created lack, and why those don't ever work. I always think it's really funny when we see, especially in gaming, you see this in everything, of course, but especially in gaming, where we've got the new X killer, and it's basically the authentic item that is authentic for a reason. We've made a clone of it, and we're just trying to push it as a cheaper, flashier way, and they don't ever take out the main game. There is no killer version of that which has that honesty. Moving on, these days, as our relative generations enter adulthood, and oh my God, not just adulthood, but middle age, video games no longer have the perception, I don't feel, by the larger culture as they did when, say, we were kids, as just being frivolous and meaningless. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be groups that think that, but as more and more of us enter into adulthood and beyond, we are able to have our say and to be able to speak towards the lack of just video games being just for kids, say, or them having great depth and great complexity, which has been found in most of the most popular titles of recent years. Do you think that video games are rising alongside what we've previously considered art, like cinematography or music, painting, literature? Are we seeing a rise to that same level, or is there always going to be this kind of distinct category of expression for video games?
I mean, I personally think that we're right alongside film.
Yeah.
I don't see much of a difference. And I mean, in fact, like, as an artist myself, I've of course thought, well, what do I want to do in the future? When I was younger, and being a filmmaker or cartoonist, I used to be a comic artist. I've looked into all those fields, and from my experience, game design is the most complicated of all of them, and it might be why it's harder to find too, because you can't speak through it in the same way you could with all these other things, and it utilizes all those other mediums. So it's good to know stuff about filmmaking. It's good to know stuff about illustration. It's good to know stuff about animation, storytelling in general. But with games, you have the interactive elements, and you have control over what the audience sees specifically, depending on their experience. So there's like interesting ways to explore this in explore storytelling in non-traditional fashion, which is why I'm interested in it. It still feels untapped. It still feels like we're learning and we're moving, but mm-hmm. I see it standing right alongside of it. But I mean, I think you're always going to see like the rise and fall of artistic integrity in all mediums. It's like I remember in the 90s, through the early 2000s, independent movies were like a really huge thing, and it was like there was this boom of like independent movies, and then that's fallen off, and then blockbuster movies have shot back up again, and then mm-hmm. 10, 15 years in the future, it'll drop back down again, and it'll go, and it usually does revolve around where the money is. Once it's proven that there's some money in something that's risky, then people start investing more money in it. Or once our economy gets better, then people tend to take more risks too. But yeah, I think we're in a weird crossroads with games where I think mainstream games are going to push back up again, and indie games or more artistically free games will kind of drop, and then there'll probably be another big boom again once somebody does something so avant-garde and weird yet mm-hmm. marketable, and it'll boom and blow up again. But it's always the stuff that you don't know is going to happen, which is why it's exciting to kind of be in this industry. But yeah, that's why I'm in it, and that's why I take it seriously. Yeah. I think it stands right alongside all the other big boys of art. But it does fall in the same way I think movies do too, where it's like, I mean, any major studio out there is going to tell you that there's a formula for a multi-million-dollar movie out there when it comes to story, and they literally have the formula in place that tells you exactly what you need to do traditionally to do it. Right. And it's the same with games. So it's just about, it's just about the direction that you want to head. And it's not to say that I'm somewhere in the middle. I definitely respect and want to understand how to make a marketable product. And when I worked on Super Meat Boy, that was me trying my best to make a mainstream success. Like, I'm going to play it as easy as possible. Right. I'm still going to express myself, and I'm still going to talk about my own personal life experience in some abstract way. So I'm invested in the project, but it's still going to be a little poppy, a little sweet, sugary, and fluffy. Not, you put Super Meat Boy's themes alongside like Binding of Isaac or The End is Nigh, and it's just, that's me saying, okay, I'm sacrificing a little bit. I'm compromising just a tad, just because I want to make sure that this investment pays out. But I'm at a point now too where I don't need to worry so much about that. So it feels great to have like that extra bit of artistic freedom to express myself and take risks.
Speaking of The End is Nigh, which I believe it just hit today, is that correct? It just came out.
It came out yesterday.
Yeah,
it came out yesterday on PlayStation. Yeah.
By the time this gets posted, it'll probably have been out for about four or 5 days at that point. But can you tell us a little bit about The End is Nigh?
Yeah, sure. The End is Nigh is a very difficult platformer. I haven't made a platformer since Super Meat Boy, which is almost 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh, wow.
And a few years back, I left Team Meat, and I basically walked away from Meat Boy, the IP in itself, and I was really depressed, and I was in a terrible, terrible, terrible spot where I felt like I didn't really want to make games anymore. I didn't like the community, and I didn't. Everything felt poisonous. With success comes jealousy, and horrible stuff just happens. And my life was just kind of surrounded with people who were taking advantage of me and totally betraying me and stomping all over me. And I just couldn't handle it. And I was like, well, the best way to get rid of this is to just sever myself from the industry. And I decided to make a game about it. That's what it was. Like, The End is Nigh is by far the darkest and most difficult thematically as well as gameplay wise game that I've ever worked on. It was me like looking myself in the face and challenging myself really and being like, well, could you even, it's been 10 years. Can you make a game that's better than this game that everybody knows and loves? And that kind of challenge was fun in itself. And it's like, yes, I think I'm ready to do something that's that risky for me, because it felt like my last gasp, you know, like this, I'll end it with this, and it'll feel cathartic, and it'll feel like I can write about my feelings of wanting to give this up and be with my family and walk away from the industry that at times feels like it's just sucking me dry and wants everything I have.
Sure.
And I wrote about it, and that's what came out. And I'm super proud of it. Super proud of it. And awesome. In the end, I came out feeling like I could still do this. And the cool thing too is right after that, then the card game Binding of Isaac 4 Souls came out. That like I got approached by that company who was like, hey, you want to do a card game? And I'm like, only if I design it. And that totally like was like, wait, I don't have to just do video games. Mm-hmm. I can do any kind of game, and I can have fun with it, and I can work with my wife on it. I can have my family involved in my work.
That's important.
Which was super cool, and made me feel like, okay, I still got some juice in me. I can do this. And so I got at least 2 more games that I can finish before I self-destruct. But
so the end is nigh, but not that nigh. We got 2 more.
The end was nigh, yes. But it got less nigh.
In terms of this catharsis, this working your way through personal struggle, and also that's something I always hear. I mean, we all know that you can Google something along the lines of video games saved my life, gaming saved my life, and that there is, and I don't mean in any way to take away from the catharsis people can get from any form of art. Music can save, people, the movies, literature, sculpture, painting. Yeah. But do you think that perhaps video games, and you also talked about going into Binding of Isaac 4 Souls for card gaming and just gaming in general, that it might be the interaction that the viewer or the player has with the art that can lead to such a more likelihood of experiencing that type of deep catharsis or ability to work through whatever that individual is working through? Is it tied perhaps to the interactive elements, your own involvement in the progression of that art form?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, super grateful for this. Like, I get emails honestly every week, at least once a week, with somebody who's telling me that, they have been struggling and Binding of Isaac saved their life. And it's like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, how does that, how does that work? And it's like, the general idea that I've been getting from those emails is that I gave them an escape from a very uncomfortable world for that period of time. And if that's the very least of what it's a success if that's all that people get is just a simple, I need to get out of this horrible existence for a few minutes so I don't off myself, then super fucking great. If not, for me, it's like, I think, I'd like to think, so I'm most inspired by music. Music is my number one. That's my, if I didn't have music, I wouldn't be around. Like, I need music. I connect in a way, maybe abstractly through the lyrics, just the feelings of the songs. Like, I'm the type of guy who gets goosebumps constantly when I'm listening to music. So maybe there are people that are connected in that way to themes and experiences in video games. And they get moved creatively or emotionally by what they're experiencing in games. and I definitely can't throw that away. I all my work is pretty mostly dark, very dark humor, but and that might just be me being uncomfortable with actually talking about things seriously.
Sure.
It's you know, if you strip the humor out of some of the stuff that I'm working on, it becomes depressing, or it just becomes poetry that's just super cringy and uncomfortable, and I get too exposed, and I don't feel good. But maybe, I don't know. I hope that some people are picking up on little bits and pieces that I'm putting down, and it's relating to them on some personal level that makes them feel comfortable, or like there's somebody else in the world that feels like they do.
Yeah.
Because everybody needs that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the biggest word I latched onto in what you just said was escape, which, again, all great art can offer us. With gaming, I've always liked to think of, too, that it gives us control. Because, again, you are Isaac in that basement, aren't you, while playing? And you are striving to take control of that environment around you. And people don't have control in their own lives. You get through your life in that video game maybe does help you feel a little bit more in control of your own life in the real world. And I think that applies not just to video games, but all forms of gaming, tabletop, all of it. On the opposite end of that, not to be all deep and powerful, but what about just enjoyment? When you go in as a game designer, a person who designs gameplay, how do you approach gaming as just a way to have fun and making a game for entertainment value? What are some of the things you think about or work on when you're just looking at, well, we got to make sure this is also fun?
I usually just use myself as like the barometer of like, I'm very critical. Mm-hmm. I'm not surprisingly not easily amused. So if I'm entertained or amused by something that I'm working on, then I feel like a few other people will, and I can kind of use that and go with that. But usually I just kind of go in trying to make, and again, I'm using the word honest. I like to treat the players with respect, which usually for me translates to, I'm going to make a difficult game and I'm expecting that you're going to be able to get through it, and I believe in you. And I think there's a lot to that. There's kind of a wave right now in games where everybody wants games to be more accessible and easier, which is fine. If a designer wants to do that, there's no issue. I have no issue with people doing that. But for me, the majority of what I'm trying to convey and what I'm talking about with my work has to do with overcoming struggle in an honest way. And that's how life is. Life is very hard, and it will chew you up and spit you out, and you need to continue. And I don't think that message will ever change with my work. I understand the arguments of making things more accessible, but look at my themes. I'm not Mr. Accessible. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, I want to make what I want to make, and I want to make it as fun as possible. And for me, fun translates to a challenging experience that makes me feel smart and skilled. Mm-hmm. And that's as simple as that. Like you don't play Magic because it plays itself. You play Magic because you're playing against somebody else. And when you do things that are crafty and interesting, you feel like you have control. You also have control over the deck that you make if you're drafting it. You're playing it against somebody else, and you get just instant serotonin rewards for feeling like, yes, got you there. Like, I'm smart. And then if somebody does the opposite to you, you feel like, I'm learning from this. It's just this exchange that for me feels great. Might not be how it works for everybody. And I'm not even a competitive person. I just really enjoy experiencing games.
Yeah.
But so that's what I try to come through with my work. I like to make, with The Binding of Isaac, I wanted to make a game that you could play forever, like an arcade game, like a game that you can play over and over and over again, and it was always new and always entertaining. That was just the basis of the gameplay of the game. I wanted it to be compelling in that way. And I wanted to mirror that to the idea of like what's that? Sisyphus. Is that the boulder story? Rolling the boulder up the hill?
Right.
Like, I wanted to also have this forever cycle of never ending. Like, when will it end? The end is nigh is kind of like that too. It's like questioning exactly when will this be over, and how far can I push myself? I really like those kind of little reward systems the depth in the Binding of Isaac is something I'm super proud of because it goes on forever. Like this, there's a skill level for Isaac where you can watch somebody start to play, get stuck on certain bosses, finally get through, and then you got this like expert level that goes beyond my threshold into this whole other realm of like, how do I break the game? It's just all these different layers that some of which I had an idea were there if I just kind of pulled apart. Like, it's my experience with Magic, really. Like, knowing that when you put these mechanics in place, eventually something will break something else, and that's okay. Right? It's okay as long as 1 or 2 cards don't do it.
Well, especially with 25 years of 10,000 cards a year or whatever crazy number it is.
And it's the same thing with Isaac. It's like, I usually go in designing new items, not knowing how people are going to break the game with these items, but knowing that they will, because I know that where the gaps are. And I know that eventually someone will do that. And it's like, Isaac's not a competitive game, so I don't need to worry about balancing for symmetry. You know, it's as long as it's not a 2-item combo that goes infinite, I'm fine with it. If you got to work for it, there's something fun to knowing the logic behind the game's mechanics enough to break the game.
Right.
And that's just one of the many cool aspects that I tried my best to keep in the game.
So I guess we would be remiss, since I am a Magic the Gathering channel, a YouTube channel anyway, to not talk about Magic the Gathering since you brought it up. How long have you been playing Magic the Gathering, and what role has it had on you as a game designer and an artist? I remember the very first day I ever saw Magic being played. Wow.
I was at the Boys Club 1994, the day Revised came out.
Wow.
And I saw a guy play a Keldon Warlord, which I thought looked really fucking cool. Like, he looked really neat back then. I was like, oh. And I'm like, what does he do? And then my friend's like, because he already had been playing, and he's like, oh, he gets bigger depending on how many creatures you have. And then I was like, wait. So there's this whole thing going on here. And I was like, okay, I've got $10. I'm going to go to Atlantis Fantasy World in Santa Cruz, a comic shop, and I'm going to get a starter pack, because I think starter packs are $7.99. And I went in, and I could get I could get a starter pack for $8. I could get a pack of Unlimited for $6, and Arabian Nights was $7, and then they had Legends for $7 as well.
Oh my gosh!
So I'm like, well, how many cards did you get in a pack? And it's like 15 cards, and it's like, okay, well, how much? 60. So I can make a deck with this. Yeah. It's got lands, so I'm going to buy that. And I remember I opened up a Bayou, and the guy behind the counter is like, I'm like, how much are these? Because I knew that rares, for somebody who just wants to play, it's like, I'll just get rid of these rares, and I can get more cards. And he's like, I'm like, are these worth anything? And back then, I think dual lands were worth about $5, maybe a little less.
Right.
They were basically worth a pack of Revised.
Right. Oh no,
in the
I
exchange.
see where this is going.
Yeah. So I basically chained through 2 dual lands in the few packs that I was able to kind of like go. And then I remember I opened a Vesuvan Doppelganger, which I thought was the coolest art I've ever seen. Like, still to this day, like the most beautiful thing. And yeah, I had more than enough cards to play. I got rid of those lands, those dual lands. Who needs those? And yeah, me and my friend made decks, and we played all summer. Like, and it was super, super cool. I was super into it. I got mildly into, like, I did my first tournament, I think, during the Necropotence era, which I wasn't even aware of. So I just got stomped by everybody. I was playing some, like, very basic blue-white control deck with what's that? There's like I can't remember. It's a white card that lets you not draw a card on your turn, so you can only be attacked by flying creatures or creatures with Island Walk. I think it's Island Sanctuary. That was my deck. A deck where you don't draw cards. I won one game, and I was very proud of myself. I was also playing with a bunch of cards that weren't tournament legal, that they helped me make my deck and whatever else. But so yeah, I got really deep into Magic. And then when I got my first job, I spent my first paycheck on a box of Ice Age.
That's what I got my first job for myself. I literally worked my first official real job with a paycheck when I think it was summer of 17, when I was 17 years old, in order to save up money for Ice Age booster boxes.
Yeah, we must be the same age. Yeah, that's what I did too.
Yeah.
And I did. And I remember opening up in my girlfriend's car while she was working, and I was in her car opening up packs. And I would read the whole card plus flavor text, and that was my ritual. Like I wanted to experience every little card, every little detail of every little card, and I was very happy with myself. And then I think around that time, like my other friends kind of stopped playing, and Magic had this kind of fall off. Like once like Mirage and stuff was coming out, then no one was playing that I knew, and it died off.
That's when I quit.
Yep, and then. Can't remember what it was. I think I got really critical about myself. I was being very reclusive as usual. I was obsessively working, and I wasn't leaving the house, and I wasn't feeling good at all. And then I was like, I need to make friends. How do I make friends? Like, what was I remember playing Magic with my friends. So I'm going to go, and I went to this place called Comicopolis in Santa Cruz that did Magic drafts. Never done a draft before. And I drafted Ravnica, first Ravnica. And people were horrible to me. It was the worst experience ever. They were so harsh and so mean, and they laughed at me making mistakes. And I'm an adult. I'm an adult at this point. And these people are just scoffing at my plays and like literally going, "Can you believe what this guy did?" Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. But I didn't let it get the best of me, and I went back a few times and started learning, and then started looking stuff up online. And got me right back in, and I got swept up, and I've been playing every set since.
Wow. I hear this from a lot of people in game design in particular, where they seem to really be drawn to or even obsessed with Magic the Gathering. Do you think there's something specific about Magic that maybe people who make games really click with it?
I think it's just its core design. Mm-hmm. It's got this foundation that can be expanded upon indefinitely. Mm-hmm. And that's very appealing to a designer. I think we all want that core mechanic that we can take and keep looking at it from different perspectives. Like, it's never a redesign. It's always the same game with new mechanics that work in the environment. Mm-hmm. And then the interplay between old mechanics and new mechanics. It makes the player feel smart at all times, because you feel smart when you realize there's a combo with a card that you have that you remember playing with in the past, and you can put those two together and make a cooler deck. Everything about the design, but it really, like, drafting is by far the most inspiring thing, I think, for me. It's like the idea of making a deck that's basically even with everybody's on the same playing field. It's not because your friend has more cards because he has more money. It's everybody's drafting from the same set. And you're thinking on the fly. It feels creative. It feels creative in a way that you're making something that you want to see how it plays out. It's random. It's very randomly generated. It's very appeals. It scratches that roguelike itch. It's always different. It's always a new experience. And, it's funny too, because like when it comes to the marketing aspect of this, the fact that I'm literally buying loot boxes, and cracking them and playing with them, that I'm against all that stuff. Right. But I will be okay with it because it's Magic the Gathering. Like, this is the one thing that I will be okay with investing money in. But then again, I'm also like, I'm a cube player. Like, I have my own cube, and I play that with my friends, every weekend, unless there's a new set, and I'll still buy a box or two, mostly to just get cube cards and draft a few times. But for me, it's really about cube-worthy cards, upgrading my cube, making new cubes. Which is, again, I bet you have an amazing cube as a game designer. I bet your cube is like I bet there's like blueprints and schematics like floating over your head as you engineer this cube. What goes into it, No, it's not. No, it's. I tried to do that in the beginning, but realistically, like balancing a cube, I think standard semi-powered cube, like a 550 cube or whatever, 550, whatever it is. I think that's kind of been put through so many tests, so rigorously tested, that people kind of know what the basis, the cards that are going into all those. The only difference between my cube and I think more common cubes is I push red black aggro a bit more via sacrifice. Like I'm still keeping bombardment in, and that will never go. Like goblin bombardment is a sacrifice is a key element of my cube, and it is competitive. And people argue that it's not, that people cut it out of their cube because it's not competitive. But trust me, it is now.
Yeah.
You can get quite aggressive with red black at this point. Black's got 1,000,000 2/1s, and that's the name of the game. And when you can recur them and you can finish, on turn 5 with bombardment or many other sacrifice outlets at this point, you're in business. But it's nice to be able to talk like this on a podcast, because I can never just start rattling on about my cube and mechanics in it, and no one will listen to me.
Absolutely. And everybody, so the first comment I can already tell you that's going to be in the comment section from any one of my viewers is going to be, I'd love a list of what's in your cube. Do you have your cube up on like Cube Tutor or something like that?
I have my old powered cube up on Cube Tutor.
Turtor.
Yeah, I have. It's called Stinky Pinky's The C Word. You can Google it. Stinky Pinky's The C Word. The C stands for cube.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. But yeah, that's my old power cube. It's pretty out of date, but that kind of gives you the basis of what I was. I actually cut my powered cards recently because it made it more fun, surprisingly.
Yeah. You should try a Popper cube at some point. Popper cube is actually a lot of fun.
I've tried those, but that feels a little like I'm missing. Like they're missing pieces.
Sure, that's fair. But that's the great thing. See, I really like that because it's actually in a lot of ways. I mean, sure, cube is like experiencing a kind of ultimate draft format, but also building a cube is just so much fun. It's like we all get to play game design, or what set would we design for Magic the Gathering if we only had existing cards to draw on, as it were. And so maybe someone does a power cube, someone does a popper cube. I also like to do set cubes where I just try and recreate. Like I loved original Innistrad. The draft environment, I think, was the superlative. And so I have a original Innistrad cube that actually breaks down into booster packs with multiple commons and uncommons.
I do the same thing.
Yeah, there you go. And
I'm right with you.
The recent Ultimate Masters was great for that too.
Oh yeah, I have an Ultimate Masters cube where it's mechanics from. We never play it. Mechanics from all the different Masters cubes. The one cube that I have that we do play a lot is the Conspiracy multiplayer cube.
Oh yeah, Conspiracy was so great.
And that got a lot of new additions from the Two-Headed Giant set.
Battle Bond.
Yeah, Battle Bond, which was quite cool. There's been a lot of I'm a big fan of the wild card sets. I'm having a lot of fun with the newest set. War of the Spark has been surprisingly cool, and from afar it did not look like it was going to be good because the mechanics, like the archetypes weren't clear. It looked like one of those muddy sets where it's like there's broad mechanics,
right?
And that cross over maybe into two halves. You get like 2 colors that want to do this, and then 3 colors that want to do that, and that's what it kind of looked like. But in the end, after what I'm drafting, there's those mechanics that you can draft around, and then there's also just the 10 guilds that you can draft, which is so far so good. We'll see. I wasn't a fan of the first Ravnica set. I was more of a fan of the second, and I've been having fun with the third. But yeah, George Fan, who now works for Wizards, is a friend of mine, and he makes a cube with like every set. Like he's got like cube boxes everywhere, and he's all about it. And I totally understand the appeal of that. Like you always want to try to like, because they put the pieces on the table, and it's like, how do you not connect these together? It's like, okay, we're gonna put this new mechanic in. It's like with the Ravnica set, it's like, oh my god, I'm so itching to make an Ultimate Ravnica set, because all of the guilds mechanics have interplay, especially Simic. Like they all work together. So what would that environment look like? But I have no time to do anything.
Right. I have the pile of half completed cubes and commander decks is just an atrocity within my living room, where it's just this stack of really great ideas that never went anywhere, where I was able to rip out some of the cards I have and then make a giant mess and then leave them for eternity, because I'm certainly not putting them away and I'm not finishing the deck or the cube, so we're doomed. And that's just the way it's going to go, is just piling up cardboard till the end.
I feel you.
Yeah. Besides Magic the Gathering, what's your favorite game that you had zero involvement in? What's your favorite game that you were not involved in besides Magic the Gathering that you love to play to this day?
It's hard to say play to this day. I mean, Tetris is a game that I can play to this day, but that's kind of just one of those general ones. I've been playing Overwatch since for the past 3 years.
Yeah.
Like every day. I really, really, really like Overwatch. I really like the direction that they went with it. And it's also a game I play with my wife. So it's that co-op team play, which I love. And in the same way, I've been playing Pokemon Go since its conception as well.
Yeah. With
my wife and friends who are all kind of into that as well, which is a nice little side scavenger hunt, not serious type game, non-competitive, a whatever experience. And as far as just general games that I really love and I'll come back to and are super inspiring, it's like the original Legend of Zelda, obviously.
Yeah.
Binding of Isaac is a very big nod to the Legend of Zelda, even with the Binding of Isaac, the Legend of Zelda. I did as much as I could to push the two together. Binding of Isaac was my Legend of Zelda.
Yeah.
I really love Spelunky. That's probably one of the more recent games that I love.
Mm-hmm.
Super great. But not that I keep coming. No, Street Fighter. I'll play Street Fighter.
Which one? Which one though?
I like there's like a Grandmaster edition that has everything in it.
Yeah.
I have an arcade set up, and it's like the Grandmaster edition. It has all the editions, but I mean, Street Fighter 2 Turbo.
That's me. I'm a Street Fighter 2 Turbo guy.
Who do you play?
I'm Chun-Li, and I don't know how to do anyone else. But I'm really good with Chun-Li, but I never ever learned anyone else.
I'm a Blanca player. Or a Guile. I'm a charge person. I want to charge back and go forward.
Yeah. I like just jumping around and throwing people in the air.
That is satisfying.
Yes. Well, Edmund, I just can't thank you enough for joining me here today. I really had a great time discussing this with you. If people are looking for more from you, more of your work, we mentioned The End Is Nigh just came out or is just coming out in the process by the time when this gets posted. But is there anywhere in particular you'd like to direct people to? Plug away, or just find you on Twitter, or what would you like?
Yeah. If you're interested in anything I'm doing, just follow me on Twitter. It's just Edmund McMillen.
I'll put it
on Twitter.
There.
I think it's Edmund. Is it Edmund M?
It's appearing. Follow what's on your screen, everyone. It's on your screen. It's on the video description. Yeah.
But yeah, then but I'm working on a prequel to the Binding of Isaac thematically. It's called Legend of Bumbo, and it's interesting. It's totally different than the Binding of Isaac, but the story will make sense when you play through it of how it's a prequel. And I am working on finishing. I just finished an expansion to Four Souls.
Mm-hmm.
Probably work on one more at the end of the year. And other than that, I'm working on Eugenics again officially, which is an old IP that was locked in some sort of limbo for many, many years. I wasn't able to touch it, but now I can touch it all night long.
Cool.
And I'm doing so.
All right. Well, enjoy touching that all night long. And I would like to think that hopefully your presence here today may have reached out and touched all of us. So good touch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's all legal.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
And this program was made possible thanks to a sponsorship from Card Kingdom, as well as the Patreon support of viewers such as you. So thank you.